This episode's brought to you by Affordable Drill Towers. Founded in 2016 by our good friend Steve Sanguidoce, a retired Houston, Texas firefighter, the Affordable Drill Tower was designed and built with functionality and versatility in mind for any training ground. As a standalone training tower or an add-on to an existing burn building or Connex setup, the Affordable Drill Tower packs a massive punch at an affordable price tag. With over 50 towers across the country, from Massachusetts to California, Montana to Texas, professionally engineered, NFPA and ISO compliant, the Affordable Drill Towers brings the versatility to your training ground. From Main Street USA, the small town fire company in their back parking lot, to the training grounds of the largest metropolitan fire academy, the Affordable Drill Tower fits the bill for price and functionality. Check them out at affordabledrilltowers.com. And two things I like to talk about also when talking about our friends over at Affordable Drill Towers. One, their customized training program. They have the ability to bring some of the best talent from across the country to your home turf after the install of the Affordable Drill Tower. Designing a customized training program for you and your department, Steve will facilitate some of the biggest and brightest names of the American Fire Service to come in and work with you and your department. And secondly, and I think most important, is Steve's belief in need over greed. The Affordable Drill Tower company gives back to not-for-profits that support organizations in the American Fire Service. Organizations such as the Joey D Foundation, which is near and dear to Steve Sanguidoce's heart, as well as many other not-for-profits that he takes a part of. He takes great pride in providing funding for organizations that push this job forward. So check them out, Steve and Dennis over at Affordable Drill Towers. Send them an email at info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Check them out on social media, and their YouTube page is kicking butt with great information, training nuggets, and information about their towers. So check them out, Affordable Drill Towers, and let them know Jeremy over at National Fire Radio sent you. This episode's brought to you by Ridgeway Leatherworks. Ridgeway Leatherworks is a firefighter-owned and operated business, as well as a family-run business, and that's what I love about it. Rob and his family are passionate about their customer service and the quality product and craftsmanship they put out for the emergency services. Rob's been on the show. We've been to his business. We've seen them in action. I've even tried to hand paint radio straps. I promise you, it is not as easy as what the final outcome looks like. The product is so good and so clean and crisp, and yet, man, it takes that steady hand. Rob's become a near and dear friend of our podcast, and you hear that over and over when we talk about our sponsors, that they're friends, supporters, and that's what this networking community is all about, is supporting one another. Ridgeway Leatherworks, Rob Meyer, crushing it. Quality and craftsmanship is number one. Customer service is right there with it. From custom radio straps, universal radio holsters, chin straps, flashlight holders, anti-sway straps, and locker tags made out of leather, there's plenty of opportunity along the way when you deal with Ridgeway Leatherworks. So check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com. Find them on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And tell Rob you heard about him on the National Fire Radio platform, and give him a little plug and tell him keep up the good work. We need to support our firefighter-owned businesses, and especially family-run businesses, where his two daughters and his wife help out day in and day out along with his other employees. So again, Ridgeway Leatherworks, check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com and find them on all your social media channels. Hey guys, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, Assistant Chief Justin McCarthy. Assistant Chief, that's pretty high up in the pecking order. It's probably one of the higher, other than a chief of department, I've had on the show. So I'm feeling honored today to have some brass with me. Chief, thanks for joining me, man.
No, anytime. I know we've been trying to do this for a while. I'm glad it lined up. The stars lined up today. So
yeah, well, you know, I mean, typical fashion. I canceled twice, and here we are. Third time's the charm. But I appreciate your patience. A little backstory. You and I met up at Ragtop Industries. We did a roundtable up there. Pete and the crew at Ragtop had a roundtable, and you were one of the guys that sat up in front, and I emceed it. We had a good rapport back and forth, and at the end of it, I grabbed you and I said, man, I'd love to chat with you further. I really liked a lot of what you were saying, and I think that you and I are very similar in a lot of ways when it comes to our thinking and mindset about the fire service. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Little background, started as a volunteer, career fireman in Wilton, Connecticut. Quickly moved on to New Haven, Connecticut in 2008. Rose through the ranks, retired as an assistant chief, and then took an assistant chief position in Greenwich, Connecticut. A little bit different zip codes, different challenges, I'm sure, knowing the area like I do. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that, but I think it's more fun to just get a little background about yourself, your upbringing in the fire service. I'd love to know like your roots and how this all came to be for you.
Yeah, no, listen, like many other people, started off with a father in the fire service. He was in Westport, Connecticut, combination department. He rose to the ranks, became a shift commander, assistant chief, did the whole career there, right? I started as a volunteer there, basically 6 months after he retired, so we never got to overlap, which kind of sucked.
Okay.
But he was the guiding force. My uncle's on the job in Bridgeport. He's got 30 plus years on as a firefighter in Bridgeport, and then as typical firefighters kids go, I worked landscaping for a firefighter. I helped out doing plumbing for a fire. You know what I mean? Like,
man. Absolutely.
So my dad had me integrated with firehouse life young. And as soon as I turned 18, which was our youngest age to be able to become a volunteer, went off, became a volunteer, got to Fire 1, Fire 2, did the EMT thing, all that.
Sure.
And to be honest with you, my father looked at me and said, you got to go work on an ambulance if you want me to support you through this, because if you don't like that, you're not going to like where this all is going.
Wow.
And
okay.
I liked that a lot. So working on the ambulance was like my college job. And I got extraordinarily lucky in that I got hired very young. And I guess in some ways timing was perfect. And in some ways timing, you know, if I could still be a company officer, a lot of times I think, yeah, you know, that's not so bad. Right?
Yeah. Right.
But I ended up kind of hitting the COVID wave. And I was, you know, talking about this before with you.
Yeah.
Hit the COVID wave like a lot of people did. You know, we had people leave and timing, just the stars aligned, however you want to put it. And it bumped me up to assistant chief in New Haven, which was a hell of an experience, you know?
Yeah. No, well, I mean, New Haven's a fire town, right? It's a typical New England town. It's a tough town. It's known for fire duty. You got the Great White Fleet there, which is, you know, a little bit different than your traditional fire apparatus that are on the road. But I'm sure New Haven really set the stage for you, though, for really falling in love with the job, though. I have to believe that.
Oh, yeah. You know, when I went to New Haven, I get to the academy, and I'd already been to the state academy. And I remember Chief Grant, who I looked up to immensely. You know, he's since passed away, but he brought us into the you know, the office on our first day, and he knew people's names, and he was, you know, pretty brash. And he looked right at me and he said, "What'd you do before you got here?" I said, "Well, I was on the job. I went to the academy." He goes, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Well, you're going to start from zero today, okay?" And I did. And, you know, I kind of made extra effort to keep my mouth shut about what my experience was, and went through the paces, and I lucked out and got an assignment that was second to none, in my opinion. I went to Engine 6 and Truck 4, which was, you know, the busiest firehouse that we had, with a great crew that, you know, they guided me through those young years of being a firefighter. They held me accountable for everything from how I operated on the fireground to which way I tied the trash bag in the trash can. And they really kind of groomed me into what I've become, and I'm grateful for it. And, you know, the story is like so many others. You know, took a lot of pride in the job and got involved and worked my way through doing, you know, tech rescue stuff, got on the squad companies, which was awesome. I mean, it was great for me. And I worked a ton of overtime and swaps and worked for my buddies. And so I spent a lot of time in the firehouse to hone in on what I love doing, you know?
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Making your own opportunity. You know, and that's so important in those younger years to immerse yourself, right? You got to make your own opportunities. And I love that. Talk to me a little bit about that New Haven culture, right? It's pretty unique to yourself, right? Like, you guys have a really good shop there. There's a lot of good firemen that come out of New Haven. It provides plenty of opportunity to be a good fireman. And for yourself in those early days and then coming up through and becoming a company boss and going to the training academy to an assistant chief position, the New Haven culture is a firemanship culture, no?
Yeah, without a doubt. So, New Haven's steeped in tradition, like so many of these Northeast towns that we see, your Worcester, your Springfield, Providence, New Haven,
Yeah.
Bridgeport. We're all cut from the same cloth, right? We go to a decent amount of fires. We see a lot of, diversity in our rescue calls. What we see in New Haven, they may not see in Bridgeport, but we could play off of each other, talk to each other. And we are proud of our traditions.
Yeah.
And we know what works and what doesn't, right? So one of the things that I always talk about is when I got to New Haven, I couldn't get over the simplicity of the way they operated, right? So SOGs, SOPs, very simplistic. They hadn't, still to this day, New Haven doesn't run LDH, right? They still run dual 3-inch supply lines. There's a reason behind it. So like so many others, I walked through the door coming from another department. I looked around. I went, what's going on here, right? Like my dad told me stories about split 3-inch.
Yeah.
But LDH had taken over in the 90s.
Sure.
Why here? What's going on here? And I use that example because most people understand it. But when you get up there and you have cars parked on both sides of the road and you got to pull the mirrors in to make it down the street to where the fire is, the 3-inch makes or breaks getting the truck in place. Right. So they were, we always laugh. The men in New Haven that came before were far smarter than anyone realized. They fixed problems before the problems became problems.
Yeah, right.
And
exactly.
That's a perfect example of saying, you know what, we're building our tactics around our city. We're building our tactics around what we see on a regular basis. And then when we do see the unique thing, we build in fail safes for that. But their bread and butter is going to a 2.5-story multifamily balloon frame construction private house, right? It's not an apartment building. Granted, they're seeing a ton of lightweight construction going on.
Sure.
They're heavily protected, right? A lot of sprinklers, standpipes, the whole deal. Not the same thing. And then on top of it, you build those houses 12 feet apart, right? So that's what you see up here. And the tactics are built to reflect that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think New Haven comes across as, from an outsider looking in, a lot of people see pictures online or whatever, and they go, New Haven stuck in the 70s. Right? Like the buildings call for that. And come into Greenwich where we don't have hydrants in every area and we're relying on tanker operations. Their tactics are built around that.
That's right.
And, massive single family homes. So it's important for people, I think, in the fire service, and I've had these conversations with friends of mine. Don't try to be something that you're not, right? Build your ship, build your firehouse, build your company, build your SOPs around what you're doing, not what you're seeing, right? Not the YouTube videos, not the fire engineering articles. They help you, but Greenwich isn't New Haven. New Haven isn't Greenwich. They're not going to operate the same way, even though we're 45 minutes apart, right?
That's it. Absolutely. I was just doing an episode with Bobby Eckert, and we talked about operational reality. He talks about it all the time. And for you, who is a strategy and tactics guy, right? And understanding the home turf in which you serve, your operational reality needs to be what you need to get the job done in your zip code and nowhere else, right? And who's to be the judge of that other than the guys that are putting the boots on the ground in that zip code every single day?
Well, yeah, exactly. And, Bobby's been kind of a pioneer, I would say, in that train as you do, not as you, see in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's gaining a lot of traction around the country. I think that's really good. I'm sure, Jeremy, with you, I know with me, you start off in the Fire 1 class and they put 3 or 4 people on a hose line and they put, 5 people on a search team. And then they cut you free to your department where there's, a volunteer shop where you might not get as many people during the day.
That's right.
You got to be a jack of all trades, or a small career department where, you're doing, split crews and who's throwing a ladder by themselves. And it's like, I get safety and I I'm not telling people to operate unsafely, but there's a reality too. And setting people
100%.
up for failure is setting people up for failure, right? And so
We need to do a better.
It's important.
Yeah, we need to do a better job on the entry level into this job to educate people about what the operational reality is, and we are failing at that, and we need to be doing a better job. And I think what's easy is, and you could talk about this as a gold collar guy. You know, when our guys are coming from the academy now. Obviously, when you guys run your own academies in a city or an urban setting, if you will, you guys run the academy based on your strategies, tactics, operations, guidelines, and so on. But when you have like a county or a statewide system where kids are going through, they're learning the basics, and then the academy likes to point the finger and say, yeah, but you're going to learn everything you need on top of this at your own fire company. And then this kid shows up at his own fire company, and there's only 12 guys left in the entire fire company because the membership is dying and they're older or whatever it is. Those kids aren't getting those, doses of reality and that in-house training that the academy points to. And I think that it's an easy way to pass the buck sometimes, to pass along the more involved or the more real types of training that need to be happening. It's just easier to say, oh, you're going to get that there. We're just giving you the basics.
Yeah, no. And I'll take that a step further.
Yeah, please.
Right? So I was working pretty regularly. Unfortunately my life got busy as everyone's does. And I backed off, but I was running a Fire One program, right, for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was one of my favorite things to do, because it's foundational, right? Everybody's coming in and like you get that halfway point and all of a sudden light bulbs start going off like, oh, that's how that works.
Right.
Like, and it's rewarding, right? It's not the same to teach somebody who's been in the fire service for a while. It's something to be said for teaching somebody their first ever firefighting topic, right? So what I was finding, and this happens at state academies, regional academies, county, I don't care where it is. If you're pulling instructors from different departments, the worst thing that I see happen is the lack of continuity.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to do ladder company operations today. And Billy Bob is from Anytown, USA. And he's telling you to throw the ladder this way. And this is who gives the commands. And this is the way the commands go. And then 2 days later, Billy Bob's working his shift. And Johnny Jones shows up and he's like, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing it that way? Well, you're undercutting people who have no foundation.
Yes.
And now they're standing there going, wait, so you want me to go into a burning building, perform at my peak, do everything right, but the instructors aren't on the same page, right? So what are we really demonstrating? Now, everybody gives there's more than two ways, more than one way, more than two ways to do that. But it's important you're at the foundation.
That's right.
They don't even know that there's more than one
That's
way.
right.
Teach them one way and then let them learn other tricks of the trade as they go. It's shortchanging people who don't have an opportunity to even have the foundation yet.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that irks me. But it goes right to, we're sending some new firefighters up to the state academy, and exactly that. When they come back, we spend another week with them just doing like operational reality.
Yes.
Give them,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what every department ends up doing.
The continuity conversation is pretty cool. I haven't gone down that road before with a guest. I think that's something I definitely want to explore further, and I think you have incredibly valid points there. For sure. And it goes right to what you and I were talking about before I hit the record button. I said, what do you want to hit on? What's passionate? What's something for you that you're passionate about? And you mentioned the word simplicity before, and I wrote it down, underlined it, and circled it, which means I come back to it after I do, after the episode when I'm typing up the narrative or whatever. But what you said to me really resonated with something that stands out to me, and it's something that we do every single day in the fire service. From the manufacturers to the NFPA to OSHA to our own fire companies, we overcomplicate the shit out of everything we do in the fire service.
Yeah, well, I think that's a chronic problem, and it's something that only we can combat, right? So, I like to use the example of air packs, right? We'll use the example of air packs. I've been on a couple committees to review air packs, not NFPA. I'm talking about local committees, right? And if you look at my father's generation, they started off with the steel cylinder Scots, right? Where it's basically, and I'll go back to this, but it's basically a wire frame, some webbing straps, and the mask itself, right?
Yeah.
And the thing operated, it did exactly what they needed it to do in that generation. And then we evolved and we ended up with wire frames and lightweight, right? Everything was all about let's reduce weight. We ended up with fiberglass, so we ended up carbon fiber. We ended up with composite. We do new materials. This was on the space shuttle, so it's going to work here, type of stuff, right? And the bottles were getting smaller, and the packs were getting, we're staying light. And then all of a sudden we have a shift, and we say that everything's got to be more ergonomic and more comfortable and more this and that, and we have to put more technology in. I get those arguments, right? But now you're taking a pack that's bigger, and I'm picking on air packs, but there's a lot of this. We're telling people, make sure you don't pat people down on with superheated gear, right? But here, put this air pack on and compress that same gear, right? Now the straps are wider, so now you're not giving off the heat the way that you were. The gear manufacturer is designing it one way, the air pack is doing something else. So they're not working in conjunction with each other. Then we're saying we got to be able to take it apart and decon it, right? Which I understand that, but deconning a wire frame was pretty easy. We did it historically. We hosed that thing off, we scrubbed it. We had that thing shining by the time it went back on the truck every day. But now we have void spaces. We have places where stuff gets trapped. And I'm going, wait, I thought we were trying to fix a problem, and in turn we're creating a problem, right? And now there's talk all over the place everywhere I go. Man, I hope they come back out with a wireframe because this is too complicated, right?
Yeah.
And we're going full circle. And, it goes from there, right? It goes to extrication tools. It goes to the struts. It goes to hose deployment. It goes, right? Instead of focusing on basics and honing the craft, what we're doing is we're trying to outsmart and out technology and out, flash the fire, right? And we're not good at any of it.
Yeah.
Right? We're sitting here saying, hey, you need to be a rope tech, you need to be a trench tech, you need to be a hazmat tech. Oh, but what do you mean you're not a fire one yet? Right? Like, I don't know how many places are putting just shy of what I went to for hazmat tech as part of Fire One curriculum.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, right? So really cool. Mike O'Hare, who is a friend of mine out of Houston, Texas, rides special. He's actually in charge of training for special operations. I don't want to shortchange him. I don't know what his exact title is, but he, I think it's changed since we talked last, but he's responsible for a lot of special ops training for Houston, Texas, or all of the training, I should say. We were talking about very much this, and we were talking about overcomplicating things, and he goes, why can't we show up at a door pop and not worry about putting out struts and setting all this shit up when all we have to do is put a wheel chock under the tire, stabilize the front rocker, and pop the door? He's like, we're being ingrained to overthink simplistic things that we used to find simple or routine, if you will, quote unquote routine or bread and butter, but now we're adding extra layers of know-how or equipment when it could just be that simple. Why can't we just keep it simple?
I was just talking to a friend of mine who's on a pretty large-scale USAR team.
Yeah.
And we were talking about torches in the fire service.
Right.
I'm trying to find the department, and I know there's one out there that has successfully operated at multiple torch events, right? Because everybody's got the petrogen torch or the oxyacetylene torch or plasma cutters or whatever, right? And what I find in a lot of cases is 90% of the people on the rig don't know how to get it going, right? So we spend that annual training doing torches where we're like, no, I think you turn this on, right? So are we going to operate a torch at the scene? And one of the things he said to me was, yeah, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to integrate people from the union welding in that area with the USAR team because we're not great at torches, but we can rely on them. That's a simple, have to be these, we've taken this, we need to be the experts at everything, and we've compounded it. Now we're not good at anything, and that's, we're like relatively comfortable with these advanced things, but not simple things. And to bring up the door pop thing real quick, I had a call where a car was up against a taxi, right? I mean, literally kissing the taxi. On the other side was a telephone pole, and the girl couldn't fit through the window, and there's a glass divider. And we said, well, why don't we just grab the winch and back this car off of the side of it?
100%.
Or whatever. Occasion opportunity. I'm like, dude, they're barely kissing each other. Right. She would climb through to the front and out the window if she could, but it's a taxi. There's a cage.
Right.
Like, we're overcomplicating. We're done in 2 minutes.
Yep. I agree with you. I agree. And I think we need more of that. But here's my question to you then. Are we doing it because we lack the confidence in our skills and abilities? Or are we doing it because we have a dumber fire service today?
No, that's the whole problem. We don't have a dumber fire service. I think we have a smarter fire service, which is part of it.
Absolutely.
Right? I've worked with some great officers that are almost too smart. Right?
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Your voice is going.
Almost like.
Go ahead.
Let's pare it back, right? We're training outside of what we're really going to. One of the other things that I'm seeing is, we talked about it briefly. We touched on it. Volunteering, right? We're struggling to find people, and career departments are struggling to get staffing because towns don't want to pay for it. So what the towns will do is give you a bigger tool budget so you stop asking for that firefighter, right? And that's, if we have that tool, it'll make up for not having that firefighter, because it makes, that 2-person operation became a 1-person operation. And that's the way we're programmed to think, right? Do more with less. Well, here's this tool that you could operate single-handedly, but you forget the setup of it. You forget how many other actions have to take place. You can't replace humans. And that's what some of the technology is trying to do, and some of the complications trying to do. And it's also budgetarily people trying to offset, well, that will take the place of a person. And it doesn't really work like that. I also just heard one recently that, departments are looking at trying to make it safer, right? And
Chief,
that's a word that gets thrown around all the time.
Chief, your volume, your voice is going in and out. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shut down this link. Yep. I'm going to leave the feed up. I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to call you back in 2 seconds, and we're going to see if the audio does better than the video. All right? So hang on.
10-4.
Okay.
Yep.
This episode's brought to you by the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Let's break it down real quick. Steve and the crew at Affordable Drill Towers is doing it again. They've created this fully custom and fabricated standpipe prop to support the fire service. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing piece of training equipment. And I want to hop into it real quick. It is designed with a 4-inch manifold of high-strength galvanized Schedule 10 pipe. The cart and manifold are powder-coated red for a durable finish, meaning it's not just a talking piece. It's not something you tuck away on the shelf. This is a training prop that can be wheeled into the classroom and then brought out onto the training ground. And so let's talk about that. In the classroom, there's nothing better than having a hands-on prop in front of the students, in front of the fire companies that are there to learn about standpipe and FDC connections. Having that prop in the classroom allows for a great instructional lecture. And then from there, take the standpipe theory and translate it to the training grounds. You could wheel the cart out that's on casters, you wheel it out into the parking lot, and that same training prop that you just used hands-on in the classroom can now be used hands-on on the training ground by pumping into it and flowing out of it. It offers such versatility in its approach. It has a 2.5-inch Siamese connection, 7 2.5-inch outlets, 6 of which are standpipe valves, has a water motor gong, sprinkler head with a control valve, and a system pressure gauge. You can also upgrade and put 3 of the most common field-adjustable PRVs. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing training prop that needs to be in every fire company or training department across the country. Reach out to Steve and the crew, info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Ask for a demo, ask for information, or check them out on social media and YouTube. There's plenty of content out there that shows you exactly what the affordable standpipe prop can do for you. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather. All right, so as you guys are tuning in right now, 24 minutes in on this podcast, sometimes things don't go as planned. And so we're going to pivot right now, and I'm going to call the chief. And thank you for dealing with this. I'm not going to edit any of this out because I think it just adds to what we actually do here. It's real. So hang on one second. Let's give him a call. Let's get it up. Here we go.
How's that?
I think it's better. I didn't cut the feed, and I was talking on the podcast, right? While I was calling you, I go, we're not editing this out. This is just going to be what it's about. So this is the joys of podcasting. Sometimes, man, the audio and video don't work out, but we're going to do it this way. Does this sound all right to you?
Yeah, no, crystal clear.
Yeah, I think it's better, actually, to be honest with you. I think the video where you were was slowing the conversation down. So anyway, I just want to backtrack a little bit. You were talking to a buddy. You were talking about, equipment and simplistic, and we're smarter today than we've ever been. And you started to lead into a story about talking with a buddy.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, do it.
All right. So, yeah, no, we were talking, and one of the things that I find a little disingenuous sometimes is we're veiling these major technology changes as safety, right?
Yes.
And what's ending up happening is we're veiling it as safety so it's not questioned, but then when we're putting it to the test, it introduces new safety concerns. And we ran into this when I was doing research and development. You know, we were given this new device that was supposed to be super safe and correct a problem, and it had to do with SCBA tracking and things like that. But one of the features of it was that it put the HUD on the outside of the mask, and so that way an officer could see how the other firefighters' air was being managed. Well, when we put it into the burn building and then we put it into some live fire training, we were getting essentially visual feedback off the smoke. So in one instance, somebody reported that they saw a fire that wasn't there. It's because they had an orange light reflecting.
Yeah.
And in theory, even when I read it, I was like, well, this is a cool feature. Then we started in practice seeing that create a problem. And in my head, I was thinking, we fixed one problem and created a new one, right? For every action, there's a reaction.
Sure.
And that's what we have to look at. We can't just take the flyer's word for it or what we see on social media as this is going to fix our problem. Yeah,
I want to hit on something too. You brought up something really great, man. You can't replace humans, and there's so many ways I can go down that path with you because as a chief of a department where personnel matters. I mean, you're dealing with personnel issues all the time. You're looking at hiring, you're looking at retirements. We need people. And a lot of times budgets are getting squeezed, and the first thing that gets squeezed, obviously, is staffing. And that becomes an issue. But you're talking about technology, and what are we doing? We're using technology or new new ways of doing something to replace humans. Look at the concept of like a squad engine, right? We used to run a rescue truck. We used to run an engine. And now it's, but that required additional people to run two pieces. Now we can combine it. We create one. We close two companies. We open one company, and now we only need 4, not 8, right?
It's an age-old problem that we're seeing more and more and more of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so how do we combat this? I mean, listen, I truly, from knowing you now and talking with you on a few occasions, I know that you are a fireman's chief. I know that there are probably days that you wish you were back in the front seat of the engine or in the squad. I get that, right? You're still a fireman, right? How do you bridge that gap then between, what you want, what you enjoyed doing, being a fireman, to now as a man wearing an administrative role when it comes to budgeting, staffing, things like that? How do we find a balance here? How do we find an equal, something that represents what we need for the guys on the streets as well as City Hall?
I think first of all, and I talk about this here, coming into this department, everybody did what firefighters do, right? They sized me up, and I respect them for it, right? Who's this guy? Where's he coming from? What's he know? What's he here to do? And, one of the first things that I started doing was conversating.
Yes.
Right. Have conversations and don't preface with, well, when I was in New Haven.
Yes.
Right. I'm the guest now. So for me, it's sitting back and listening. And listen, there's things that when I got here, I said, well, that doesn't really make sense to me. But I had a conversation. Right. And it's even, I'll flip it to another topic.
Yeah.
We're a combination department, right? So now we're trying to recruit and retain volunteers because the way the system is, this system does not succeed without the volunteers. And I'm trying to make sure that we're doing proper recruiting for the career staff. And, it's trying to pull good people is definitely a challenge. I mean, trust me, a lot of people after COVID do not want to get involved in emergency services.
Yeah.
A lot of people that, historically went into this business were blue collar. Well, unfortunately, now they need to work 12-hour days instead of 8-hour days.
Yep.
And as a result, they can't make it to drill night. They can't make the calls during the day. And so you're losing out on this opportunity to get good people through the door and retain them and get them to go to calls and get them to go to drill night and show up for the parade. And, I think everybody's getting creative. Is it things like going outside the box, focusing on social media drives? I don't know. The sign in front of the firehouse, volunteers wanted, or, putting an ad in the paper that we're having a entry-level test. Those days aren't working anymore.
Right.
So, that's really important. But like to touch upon the administrative side, I also have to be able to coherently talk to the public and the elected officials.
Yes.
To say, look, we've explored all of our options, and no matter how we cut the mustard, we need additional people, which requires money. And that needs to be backed with data, which is something that I'm actively working on. And with that data, what we decipher from it has to be, it is what it is. You can't manipulate the data. You have to use it to what you need to use it to. And there's a town close by that's looking at deployment studies, and it might mean that the 100-year-old firehouse gets closed and a new firehouse gets built because of the way the town developed over the 100 years. That's a reality, and it sucks, but it's a reality. And it's up to us as chief level officers to make that work.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. I mean, and that's the interesting thing about this is it's always easy. You think about, sitting around that kitchen table and it's the, wants and needs and desires. And then it's the reality conversation, right? For you, I mean, we didn't really touch on it. We talked about it, but I want to talk about that a little bit. You brought up a really good point. You talked about when you came to Greenwich. So you retired in New Haven as an assistant chief and then took a job in Greenwich, Connecticut as an assistant chief, which is a different type of town, and it's a combination system and so on. So I have to think that your upbringing in the volunteer fire service certainly has helped you in that regard. Bridging that gap between career and volunteer in your new fire department there and so on. But how important is that to, educate and provide the right tools to the guys that are on the ground in a way that they can understand it? Sometimes it just takes time, right? Like we can't work our magic overnight.
Oh, no. And you want to know what I find that's been very successful is don't bullshit anybody.
Nice.
Right. I think that's where people struggle, because they don't want to be the person bringing the bad news. They don't want to be the bad guy. They don't want to be, the Johnny Negative walking through the door saying, it's not going to work. And I think that's what's kind of worked for me is, if, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll go back to being on the squad, right?
Yeah.
You had a lot of type A people.
Sure.
And you would get the crews that would decide, you know what, if we move where we store the ropes, it'll be better. So group 1 wants to store the ropes in this compartment. Group 2 comes in, why are the ropes here? And they move it, right? And that back and forth, I've been there. I've been a part of companies like that. The back and forth goes on for like 6 weeks before somebody finally snaps, right? And it's like, dude, if you guys all got together and just had a conversation, maybe group 1 is right. The rope should be over there, and we just have to talk about it. But everybody's like, they're more than willing to talk crap about the crew when nobody's around. And what's made me, I hope, in the eyes of the guys here in Greenwich, successful so far, and it's been a short time. They're just warming up, but is I'll go down and, if I have a late meeting, I'll ask them if I could jump in on the meal, or, they've invited me to the meal. That's been awesome to hear them out.
Yeah.
I'm not above throwing in and helping out, and just hearing, and just, we tell all the rookies, shut up and listen. Well, I'm the new chief. I got to shut up and listen. And, I think that leads to better conversations. It leads to better understanding of, what will work and what will not work.
Yeah. And what I love about that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say it stops the wasted time.
Yes.
So, that's what I hate.
Yeah. I agree with you. I hate spinning my wheels, especially on things that you don't have much traction on or ability to influence. It's just, let's move on, and when you can influence or change the situation, then change it and let's go. Like, time's important. I think what's really interesting and what I love is the parallel, right, within your career. You had experience prior to coming into New Haven. You get to New Haven, you go through the academy again. They tell you to shut up and listen, and you're going to learn our way. And you learn from that, because now you go from a assistant chief's position in one city to another city, and you're doing the same thing again. You're listening.
Well, it goes back to simplicity, right?
Right.
If it's not broke, don't try to fix it, right? And in my experience, the guys who are the loudest never stop to smell the roses and figure it out. And they dig themselves into a hole. I'm not saying that I'm a pushover, but I do want to hear everybody out, because, sometimes the quietest guy in the room has the most information.
That's a lot of times
that I've been shown that time and time and time again.
Yes.
A quick antidote about that,
please.
So, unfortunately, we survived through the period of time where we lost a firefighter in New Haven, Ricardo Torres, in May 2021.
Yes.
So Ricardo Torres, younger firefighter, his lieutenant, sustained serious injuries. And prior to that, I was on a committee that was always working on kind of honing our skills for retirees' funerals. And we worked hard to kind of get that system down. And unfortunately, we had a couple of active duty people die unrelated to the job.
Right.
And we took that model and we put it on a bigger scale, and we provided exactly what we should have, which was we gave the family a send off for an individual who deserved nothing better than the best, right?
Yes.
And the Ricardo Torres incident happens. I'm a relatively new assistant chief. And I think to myself, our plan is not cut out for this. Okay. And so we reach out to the state group that helps with that. But I also reached out to the FDNY ceremonial unit, and I said, look, we need help. And guy who I've become very proud to know, Joe Lapointe and his team, come up to New Haven. And this is a guy who gets into the ceremonial unit after the Father's Day fire pre 9/11 and has been there ever since in New York City.
Wow.
If you've seen a fire department funeral in New York City, you've seen Joe Lapointe's work and
Yes.
his team's work. Okay. The guy walks in, he has an unsuspecting jacket, and he sat in the complete back of the room off to the side. And we had to invite him up, and he said, I'm not here to take over. I'm here to listen and help. That's a guy that I will forever be in debt to, and I think the members of the New Haven Fire Department will forever be in debt to.
Wow.
He helped us immensely, and that was a guy who literally was sitting in the back of the room, okay? He had the most knowledge. We just had to ask him. And as soon as we brought him to the table, he basically laid out, here's what you're going to see, here's what we need to do. We're happy to help you. Tell us if we've stepped on anybody's toes. I've never been more speechless in my life. And you take that and you translate it into everything we do. Well, that quiet guy knew exactly what we needed to do.
Yes.
And how many times have you been at the call? I know I've had it happen to me. Anybody who's been in the fire service has probably had it happen where, you know, you have the electrical problem and all of a sudden somebody goes, hey, you know, Mike, outside, he's an electrician on the side.
That's right.
Right? Like, oh, I didn't know he did that. Bring him in. Let's let him look at this problem. Or
right.
So-and-so's a plumber or whatever, you know, and those quiet guys, they know their craft. And that's where conversations at the table translate into the bigger conversations. And it provides a better service for the people, which is what we're here for.
I agree, and I want to just dive back a half a second. The line of duty death that New Haven had with Ricardo Torres. It was on May 12th of 21. For you, I know you were very involved in the process. After his death. Preparing for the funeral and all the services that came with and all the responsibilities and duties. And I know many people spoke very highly of you and how involved you were. And from there moving forward, when you talk about this process, what did that do for you? When Joe Lapointe walked into the back of the room and sat down, and after getting to know him and after being able to put together an incredible send-off for a fallen brother, like, do you ever have time to just sit back and think about that experience and what that has done for you, to you, and for the New Haven Fire Department?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely, for sure. I mean, it was a challenge for everybody. And I think that it's, you know, I've tried to dissect it because I've thought about like the time and what people told me. And I think Joe nailed it from the perspective of the ceremony, and some of the other chiefs of, you know, Hartford who had gone through it, Bridgeport who had gone through it. They nailed it on the things that you don't expect. So, you know, I think at the time it was one of those things where you had to pull it together. You had to be there for the family. They were priority number one, but you also still had to make sure that the calls got answered after, right?
Sure.
I mean, but then it's the fallout that you don't see, right? And I tell two stories about that regularly, and I'll keep them brief here. But, you know, one of the requests from the widow right up front was, can you put me in touch with another widow who has children?
Wow.
The answer at the time was, I got to see what I could do, because I did not want to say no to this person who within the last 72 hours just lost her husband. She was pregnant at the time and they had a 1-year-old. I mean, I don't want to be the person to say no.
Right.
I don't know anybody who would.
Right.
And so, you know, I'm building this relationship. So again, I reach out to Joe and he said, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. And he had somebody. and we were able to connect people, and it worked out amazing. And even I ended up on the phone for 3 hours with this widow, guiding me through what to expect for this new widow,
Yeah.
and how to overcome some of the problems, and what to be prepared for. And so that was huge. The other problem was we immediately, Chief Walston, myself, and the rest of our team, we got together and we said, look, we got to be able to give people time off. If they need it, we need them to have their heads in the game. And very few people took us up on it. What we saw more of was people essentially not going home.
Right.
And quickly the problem shifted from, are we going to have enough people to work the shifts, to, we need to make sure these guys go home.
Yes.
And because everybody felt the need to be at the firehouse, be at the table. But what nobody realized was, and myself included here, there's still a wife and kids and responsibilities at home.
Yes.
And on top of it, that spouse just saw somebody, one of your coworkers, die.
Yeah.
So now they're associating that with their spouse.
Yeah, for sure.
So that spillover, it took time, because the spouses got together and created this awesome kind of like wives, mothers group, and they were there for each other. But that lasts for so long before you're looking at your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or fiance, whatever, and saying, why are you working again?
Yeah,
like,
come home.
You've been there for 3 days, dude. Like, we need you here too.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure that, we didn't have things going off the rails 6 weeks or 6 months later was where the challenge really set in on that. And it's something we were warned about, but until you live through it, you're not going to really see how drastic things change months later, when all the phone calls stop and when all the letters stop, and you're going back to your routine.
Yeah.
Taking in the chest pains and activated fire alarms, and the people aren't thanking you at the grocery store anymore, and now reality kind of sets back in. That's when you got to really turn it back on and be there for everybody.
I mean, I can't even imagine the sleepless nights and the learning curve that came with all of it, and as a higher up within the department. I mean, it's the burden that you shoulder is the burden of every single member of your department, right? The higher the rank, the more you carry, I feel, and so going through an exercise like that is, hopefully you never have to deal with again. I mean, you haven't done it before. So what you don't know. And I can only imagine what came with all of that. And it's just quite an undertaking. I can only imagine.
But no, that's where, I think people need to realize too, that we're all a brother sisterhood out there.
Yeah.
And, while you don't want to have to go through it, there's people like Joe, people like the Connecticut Honor Guard that are out there that's not the time to be too proud to ask for help.
That's right. And I'm glad you said that.
That's a really big piece of the puzzle too, is knowing that, it's one thing to put on the funeral for the past chief or for the, the great guy who's been retired or been out of the company for, 10 years, 20 years, but to do it for a line of duty death, it's just impossible. And you can't do it alone.
Yeah, and that just goes to say, I mean, you got to be able to know when you need help and when to ask for help, and that goes across the board on so many different things. Thank you, Chief, for sharing that with us. I know that it can't be easy, and I'm sure that's a real heavy spot in your career. Moving forward in Greenwich, exciting. There's opportunity. There's different challenges ahead for you. New Haven's chapter. You're on a new chapter now. And Greenwich with the combination department, I'm sure they have their woes as well as incredible highs. How's the transition going, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, the transition is pretty cool. I mean, I got to be honest.
Yeah.
The people down here, the firefighters are firefighters.
Yes.
Right? The volunteers, the career, it doesn't matter. You're dealing with firefighters. Their heads are in it. They're in it for the right reasons. and so you immediately relate back to that. But it's different challenges. Greenwich is, it's on the map for being the home of the big houses and the wealthy,
Sure.
and that provides us with big challenges. I mean, I went from 2.5 story wood frame balloon traditional New England culture to 20 and 30,000 foot estates that have their own cistern, and we don't have water supply up there, or hydrants, and so with the things that I face here, I think a lot of it is what we're facing nationwide. We're facing a challenge of recruitment and retention of the volunteers.
Sure.
And we're trying to get creative. We're trying to think outside the box. I'm having regular meetings with our volunteer companies to try to come up with new ideas, and if somebody has a good idea, run with it, and we'll explore it, because nothing's off the table. It's important to try things, and if it doesn't work out, it's really not that big of a deal, but at least try it. Luckily, that old school 70s career volunteer relationship isn't a problem here. We have
Good.
combination firehouses, so the people are integrated with each other. They know each other. Our active members are well known on the career side, so they're able to be utilized, and that's really, we don't have that issue the way that they do in a lot of other places, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
But I think just being myself and the chief of department and the other assistant chief, we all came from the outside in the last 3 years. So I think that's been a big.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big shakeup for the job.
Yeah.
So I think, overcoming that hurdle of us learning the system and them learning us has, it's been good. There's been a couple of hiccups and challenges.
There's going to be.
There has to be.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, nobody's going to do it perfect every time. So that's been the biggest challenge, I think, is, having everybody let the guard down, realize, nobody's coming in to drop the hammer. We're all, trying to work together and just achieve, and, just remind everybody that, everybody signed up to be a firefighter. I remember hearing this a long time ago. Firefighters don't like to admit it, but you wouldn't do this job if you didn't like to help people.
That's right.
So just, going back to that, anybody could volunteer at the Rotary Club, and anybody could get a job, working for, traffic and parking or whatever. So it's not about having the municipal job. It's not about volunteering. It's about helping people. And if you could put the tough facade aside for a second and realize that's the ultimate goal, I think, everybody here's gets that, and we're trying to just provide a good service to everybody.
That's cool. I think about the operational challenges. That I had this conversation the other day with a couple guys, and a couple guys want more for themselves, right? To challenge themselves, but sometimes in your own district, it's so it's so one-sided with what you have in front of you that it doesn't provide tremendous opportunity to maybe go to fires in different types of buildings, or operationally, work in a different environment, which makes you a better firefighter and a more well-rounded firefighter. So opportunity's cool. And I always welcome change. I always welcome different opportunities if it's going to help me grow, help the fire company, whatever it is. So for you, I mean, on a chief level, that's got to be fun to go from, the urban streets to more of a suburban setting on some of the outskirts. I know Greenwich has its downtown too and so on, but I mean, it's a very different game when you have a 20,000 square foot home with a large setback, versus your row frames. It's a whole different animal. And for you and your career, 20 years in, it's got to be a lot of fun learning a new game. It's got to be.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And, for me, you want to know what I love probably the most out of all of it is, if you couldn't tell, just talking and getting to hear things, because I mean, I was in a department in Westport, department in Wilton. They're similar in structure, but I was there for a short time. So, hey guys, what have you experienced? What have you seen? Because the way, and I just talked to somebody about this, the way you fight a fire in a mansion is not the way you fight a fire in a balloon frame.
100%.
You have to be skilled in both.
Yes.
And so talking to people about, hey, what have you seen? How did you overcome it? I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if I hear the same story twice. I'm going to pull something out of that because as a chief officer, when I show up, I want to be a help, not a hindrance, right? And one of the things that I made perfectly clear to my shift commander, my deputy chiefs, I'm not here to take command from you. I'm here to observe, help out, grab a side, whatever you need me to do. Because listen, you've earned your rank, you've earned your place, and you're the pro at this. I'm the one who has to catch up.
That's right.
So the fires I've been to, I've tried to be more of an observer and a helper than, showing up and asserting myself.
Right.
I just don't think that gets us anywhere. And all it does is really it draws the attention negatively on the operation, and it's a distractor from what needs to be done.
And you're also setting the tempo with your chiefs. They understand where you fit in, where they fit in, and it sets the tempo and allows them to know what's expected of them. And expectations are critical in the fire service, especially now more than ever. Letting people know what the expectation is from them and what we want from them. If they know that, then they know how they act, how they perform, how they operate, and that's imperative.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, listen, I set the tone early. At least I think I did. I have a chief officer who's been a deputy chief since they instituted deputy chiefs in Greenwich, right? We didn't have shift commanders 17 plus years ago. It was a different structure. He's been here long enough to know he knows his job.
Yes.
I know he knows his job. And
yes.
all my shift commanders are great, but he's an example of somebody I literally walked up to day one and I was like, dude, I need you to show me how this operates. Like, you've been here the longest. Give me the history lesson. Let me grasp it. And I'm not afraid to go back to him and say, hey, so-and-so said this. I'm fine doing that, but why is it that way or whatever? I never walk into a room trying to be the smartest person or trying to be the loudest voice.
Yeah.
Like I said, all it does is draw negative attention. So you got to be able to learn. And to me, learning's the most fun thing because it just diversifies what you could do when it comes to the heat of battle, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more well-rounded, the more diverse, the more in tune with different ways, methodologies. If this way doesn't work, I got, ways 2, 3, and 4 in my back pocket, because I've read, I've learned, I listened, I talked, I watched. That is so important. And I think, as a firefighter, it's important, as a company officer, and even up through the ranks of assistant chief, and so on. You got to be able to do something more than one way. And that's where you're going to find commonality and common ground with the troops or with the administration, is finding a way. If the first way doesn't work, you better have 2, 3, and 4 in that back pocket that will allow you to find commonality so you can move forward.
Yeah, one of the best things in Greenwich that I found is the guys, the people, the boots on the ground, career and volunteer.
Yeah.
When I got here, I kind of met with as many as I could and said, what should I know? And I was blown away that it was common messaging. Like, everybody was giving me similar feedback.
Yes.
Hey, Chief, you need to know this is our operation if you're north of this parkway, right? Or, Chief, just so you know, if we get this, it's an anomaly. Here's a building that makes me nervous. Well, I was getting that same feedback from everybody. So it meant that everybody was on the same page. Everybody was pre-planned out for what needed to be done in our target areas. And it made me feel good. I wasn't just getting, well, group 2 doesn't do housework. It's like, I didn't want to hear that and they didn't give it to me.
Right.
So it was perfect. And I really appreciated the feedback that I did get. And what I told them was, dude, if I say something and you don't think it's going to work, I'm good with you telling me. Just make sure you tell me why it's not going to work. And if you bring me a problem, try to bring it with a solution. I may not pick your solution, but don't be a problem factory. And everybody's been super respectful of that.
I love that. I'm actually writing that one down. If you have a problem, bring a solution. I love that, because that goes to finding a way to solve or address the problem instead of just bitching and moaning about it and not having any way of moving on. Some people like to bitch and moan just for the sake of bitching and moaning and never put any thought to how they can fix that because they just enjoy the bitching and moaning.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I can respect the guy who likes to bitch and moan.
Yeah.
And if you are that guy, like, all right, I got 15 minutes. I'm gonna stop and have coffee. Bitch at me, bro. That's cool, whatever. But don't expect it to change because you're a factory of complaints, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I'm
almost not gonna take it. I won't take you as seriously. But if you say, hey, can I grab you in the hallway real quick? Hey, listen, I noticed the guys are struggling getting this piece of equipment off. If I rearrange this, it probably would work out better. Okay, let's pick it apart, but I don't see a problem with it. Boom, problem solved, right? Like,
yep.
It's little stuff like that
wow, and
I think goes a long way.
And nipping that early on, man, that's the best stuff. It doesn't fester. You were talking about moving the ropes in the squad, and every shift wants to do it different. Every shift wants to do it differently, and and so on. If we can just come to commonality up front, we move on. We don't dwell. So I love it. Chief, a great conversation, man. Thank you.
This is great. I know I'm all over the place.
No, you're good. You're good. You got a lot going on. Listen, we squeezed this in, so I appreciate you spending some time with me. But I mean, I'd love to get you back involved with a couple other things that we have coming up. So I'll reach out and let you know about some of that and so on. I really do value your stance on a lot of issues. You and I, like I said when I started this, I found that there was a lot of commonality between how we look at things and so on. So this has been a great conversation. And just thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself and your thoughts on the fire service. It's cool. And I wish you tremendous success with your new, your new spot, in Greenwich. And, if we can ever help in any way there, please don't hesitate to reach out. But man, I just appreciate you spending some time with me today.
No, listen, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I've seen you guys, out there and taking the time out to do this for the fire service is huge.
Thank you.
It does not go unnoticed, and it is appreciated because, believe me, I pulled on some of your stuff when we were doing apparatus designs and things like that. And it's a perfect hub to get information. I love it. So
thank you. Please. And we're actually going to be streamlining that process even more, and there'll be more to come on that the end of this year. But thank you, man. Words of encouragement are always welcome because it truthfully fuels us to just keep pushing and making it better. So, and you're a part of that, man. You joined me today, and I thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas and a little bit about your career. So, Chief, thanks so much for joining me today. Appreciate you.
Jeremy, thank you.
Yep. Stay right where you are. I'll chat with you off air for a minute. Let me just sign off the podcast, all right? Don't go anywhere. Guys, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Assistant Chief Justin McCarthy out of Greenwich, Connecticut. An incredible career. He's got a lot ahead of him still. He's got plenty to do. So what a great conversation. And I love good conversation because a conversation makes this job just a little bit better. So take it. Go back to the firehouse with it and talk about it because when we talk about the job, we're making the job better. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.